All right, let's finish this. So, I've grouped Layton and the DGS games together because they by far have the most in common, being that they're all very distinctly British and employ a lot of the same mechanics, like multiple witnesses on the witness stand at the same time giving testimony. Like, the Great Ace Attorney clearly came as like a spiritual successor to the Layton game more than anything else. And I think it makes sense to us to group them together, even if the Layton game itself is not that interesting, or not that much of a Lace Attorney game, rather. Like, it's really hard to say because the Layton game is good. I like it, but it is decisively more of a Layton game in terms of its plot than it is an Ace Attorney game. And it was written by, I think, the Layton team too, so that makes a lot of sense. But it also led to some of the better aspects of the Great Ace Attorney later on. So for that much at least, you gotta give it credit. I think it does need to be included and counted. And it's actually the primary reason why I used this tier maker rather than the other one I found first, which had every game except for Layton included, and didn't have all this all this extra gibberish at the bottom that I don't care about. But so as far as the case in this game, the first one, I'm assuming this is referring to the prologue case, mostly because I'm not sure what else it could be referring to. Like, these icons are not very revealing. Like, I'm going to assume this is the prologue case, this is the fire case, this is the gold case, and this is the Great Witch Trial. So I'm just keep that in mind when I'm rating these. The first case, I think it's just literally just called the British Turnabout, where the twist is that Phoenix Wright is in Great Britain. That's it. That's the case. My understanding is that this happens like between 3-2 and 3-3 chaotically, which is why Phoenix and Maya are still together, and why Phoenix didn't know about Furio Tigre representing him in court until like a month later. But so as far as this case itself goes, it's completely forgettable. Like, I'm not putting it in mediocre because I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and it's really short, but there's nothing to this case. Really, like, it's completely unmemorable. There's not even a murder in this case. There's not really a real murder in this entire game. Like, you'll get to the last trial, and there's the Layton-esque tragic backstory to everything, but no actual murder occurred at any point in this game. So that when you know that, for one, this case doesn't even try to present itself as a murder case; it's an assault case. Two, when you realize there's no murders anywhere in the game, like, it does kind of neuter the weight of a lot of the cases in this game. But we'll act as if we didn't know the murders that happened later aren't real. But as for this case, I just really don't have anything to say about it. It's very box standard evidential case. Like, it's literally just about the mystery and nothing else, and there's really not a lot of drama to it. Like, actually, I am going to move it down to mediocre, because at least, like, at least these cases have something to them. Like, there's something memorable about each of these cases, which there just really isn't here. It's in the same category as 2-1 for me, where there's just nothing memorable about it. Maybe not anything necessarily wrong with it either, but there's no reason to return to this case. It basically only serves as a short prologue case before taking you away from this British court entirely anyways, so it introduces attorney mechanics, and then it moves on. That's what it's there for. The second case, however, introduces a lot of the mechanics that will come to define the rest of the trials in this game, of which there are really only 3 trials, because this is Layton game first, Ace Attorney game second, and then even then there's only 2 murder trials. So, this one is the one with the burning in the forest, like the thieves who get burnt in the middle of the forest by a witch. You get introduced to multiple witnesses on the stand, which is a really good mechanic, though this game uses it better than I think anything in the Great Ace Attorney, because there are also like red herrings. There are red herrings for like witness reactions. Like the Great Ace Attorney does not have a single red herring witness reaction. Like having not every single one of them be useful in this game, I think, is really smart. I don't remember if that happens in this case or not, though. I think it might not happen until the next case. It's like this case isn't very long or deep either. Like you're suspected. Every single defendant in this game, I think, is the Great Witch girl whose name escapes me. The one who's accused of being the Great Witch. You're defending her in every single case. Well, I think you're defending Maya in one of the cases, rather, but not in this one. And then the murderer is not like there's a decent mystery to it, especially when you have to whip out the spell book to figure out. Like you whip out the spell book to figure out what the spells do, and figure out the names of the spells. Make the connection that one of the spell names is really similar to one of the names of the characters in the trial. I think that's pretty clever. It's not really a super memorable case on its own merits. Like, I'm not going to pretend that's one that I'm going to return too much. There's not really much wrong with it. And the mechanics it introduces, I think, are pretty clever, but it's not much else going for it overall. Like, it's about here. I could see it being about here. It doesn't have anything obnoxious like these cases below it. And it's got more depth to it than, like, Investigations 1, so. Layton Trial 3, I actually quite like this one. And it ties back to the gender swap trans thing that I pointed out with 5-3. In this case, it actually does not try to go for that theme, and in that regards, it ties it in with the witch theme of the game and actually turns into something really clever. Where the murderer is the butler, but the butler, like not the butler, like the assistant, who is posing as a boy because if it were revealed that she were a girl, she could be accused of being a witch. Which shows how completely messed up this society is, that any woman could be accused of being a witch at a moment's notice, and kind of just have to live in constant fear of that being the case, especially if you are a witch, which is not something you get to choose. It's just something you're born as. Also, actually, I'm going to cycle back to something about the previous case real quick. The one memorable thing about this case that I actually think I'm going to put it above these cases for is the ending, where after you figure out who the real witch is, you get to watch them executed in real time in a cutscene, which is just like a huge shock to just blatantly see someone die in front of you like that. Like, she's not really dead, don't worry, no one actually dies in the course of this game. They only die in backstory, don't worry about it, it's fine. But at the time, when you see that, it's a huge deal, and it's sets up some plot points related that makes that cutscene a lot different in hindsight. But when you first see it, though, I think it's a really shocking scene, and then pretty effective emotional gut punch. So I think that does elevate it a little bit. As for this case, I like how the gender swap is handled. I do think this case is the one that doesn't make sense in terms of like, how does the magic trick work in reality for this case? Because the magic trick is that she can create portals through walls if the wall is painted green or something like that. But how would they make that work with, like, the faked magic or whatever? It wouldn't work. It's kind of a huge plot hole. But whatever. Like, besides that, the fact that the victim in this case is Professor Layton himself, and that the scene where Wright's final objection, where Luke turns the statue of the pointing professor, is so good. Like, that's incredibly funny. And I do find the murderer a lot more sympathetic here, especially considering she also thinks she killed her mentor, like, a long time ago. Even though it turns out that was suicide. But she's got a compelling story. She's got a compelling mystery. It plays off the tropes of the game, the mechanics of the game, really well to create a mystery, which also has a really shocking finale too, where Maya gets sent into the flames, at which point, you know, okay, something's up here. But it's also kind of shocking to see, regardless of that. So yeah, I'm gonna say this is a pretty good case. Let's see. Like, I think there's a lot to like about this case. It's a Layton case, so it's not gonna be one of the best in the series or anything. But I still do like it. I think about here seems about right. And then the last trial. If I remember correctly, this is not really even a murder trial at all. It's just a trial for being the Great Witch. It's kind of just... It's the equivalent to the Layton's big scene of piecing together the giant mystery and what happened. There's also, like, the second prosecutor girl who's, Estella is her name? I forget all the character names of this game, except for Barnum. He's literally the only one I remember. But, yeah, she's like the sister or friend or whatever of the Great Witch accused girl, who's actually the one responsible for, like, the entire town getting burnt down because she rang the bell, and that the overseer guy set up this terrifying prospect where anyone can be made to faint with the spells, or this, like, the ringing of a bell. I think it's just ringing a bell, not just metal in general. And that all the magic was hallucinations based on being unable to see the color black or something, which is like, this is a Layton game. Layton's have these really contrived, pseudo-scientific, overarching plots that don't really make sense, but you kind of just roll with it. I think a lot of the mysteries are pretty solid here. I think, like, the presentation of this case in particular is really effective, with, like, the giant bonfire in the open air court. I think it is a murder. She's tried for, like, is it? I forget if it's a murder or not. I think it's tried for the murder of, like, the overseer character, who's not actually dead anyways, but was believed to be, like, consumed in a dragon of flames or something. Yeah, he's not actually dead, so nothing actually is being tried as a murder. That's why I'm forgetting. Yeah, like, I think as a Layton climax, this is really effective, but it's really hard to consider this even an Ace Attorney trial, because Ace Attorney has basically nothing to do with the event of this trial. Like, it's framed as an Ace Attorney trial, but it's not really one. So on that merit, I think as, like, a conclusion to the story, it's pretty effective. Like, I'm inclined to put it... I've got some weird decisions here that I'm going to have to come back and revisit, but I'm inclined to put it, like, right about here. I'm actually not sure why I have this up as high as I do. Is what I'm thinking right now. Yeah, that was really high. I think that fits better there. Okay. And yeah, that's it for the Layton game, I guess. Not really a ton to say about this game. Like, I honestly spent more time on it than I thought I would. But we're getting on to the meat of this video now. Just right to it. The Great Ace Attorney. I've played the first game like several years back when the fan patch was released. And I replayed it just this month when I got the Switch copy of the full Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. So these are all very fresh in my mind now. And I have things to say about all of them. Starting with 1-1. Great introduction to the characters. Great introduction to Ryunosuke and Kazuma. An introduction to, like, reintroducing the multiple witnesses style of testimony, which I think works really well. I honestly hope that gets brought over to the mainline series at some point, because I think it's a really good mechanic that adds a lot to the game. But I understand why it probably won't be, because it's not really modern either. I think there's one thing that bugs me about Inspector Hosonaga, in that you never really learn why he has a cough like he does. It feels like it should be tied into some story plotline later on. Like, when I first played this, I thought it'd be tied into, like, the poison that comes into play in this case. Because a good chunk of this case focuses around, like, a poisoning incident, which is the real murder weapon. But I gotta be honest, that whole poison subplot doesn't really amount to anything, and feels like it's kind of tacked on for the sake of padding. Like, you remove the poisoning subplot, like, have the professor just get shot, and then Ryunosuke get blamed for it. You could, like, you'd have to make, like, some minor edits, but otherwise that entire subplot just amounts to nothing. It kind of feels like filler to me. You could have cut Josiah Brett's testimony from 2 entire trial segments into just one if you had cut it down a little bit there. I do like some of the mysteries on display, like how, like, this side plot about the stolen coin becomes a linchpin in figuring out the solution because of the stakes were swapped. And, like, how it's actually fairly challenging for an intro case. It's also very long for an intro case. Like, there's some tricky contradictions in this one. And it does mostly serve as, like, a character introduction. Josiah Brett's a very enjoyable, terrible person witness. And the more you learn about her later in the game, shines more light on her actions here, but even just without a motive, as, like, this incredibly rude, incredibly racist English woman who fakes needing a translator just because she doesn't want to speak Japanese herself, and then gets away with it all in the end. Like, a big recurring theme throughout a lot of the first Great Ace Attorney is that you don't really get satisfying endings to anything. And, like, you pin the murderer here, and she has her breakdown, but then you're told immediately after that she's going to be off the hook. And especially once you find out later, some implications of that, especially shining light on why she'd be let off the hook. Like, I'm fine with the ending not being satisfying, because you get your catharsis with the breakdown, and the fact that she doesn't get her catharsis in the story until much later, I think that's fine. I think the drama of this case is pretty well done. I think seeing Ryunosuke go from, like, this completely nervous, shaky lunatic to, like, a competent prosecutor over the course of the trial, and having Kazuma at his side as, like, the Edgeworth figure to guide him along is a really interesting dynamic that doesn't really come up again. Like, it's definitely one of the best intro cases in the series, even if it is a bit overlong. Like, I'm inclined to put it right behind this case, I think, for now. Just because comparing these 2 cases, I think Investigation 2's first case is marginally better, but they're both very good. 1-2. 1-2 is in a weird place, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Like, this case doesn't matter. Nothing about this case matters. There was no murder. There was no murder victim. Like, it's a Disney death, which is kind of cheap. It does stick at least for the entire first game, so I've been left 2 years in hanging waiting for that, which I thought it would stick because of that, but nah. It was an accidental assault that led to a memory loss, but not murder, and then there's one thing this case has going for it that it introduces the great deductions, which are just an absolute joy each and every time. Seeing what absolutely wild theories Sholmes comes up with based on observation, and then stepping in to lightly nudge him in the correct direction it's amusing every single time. Like, he's gonna say just the most wildest crap imaginable, and you're gonna come in and make it all reasonable, but also, like, find out some big secret in the process of doing so. It's a really satisfying mechanic, too. Actually, you know what I said is the divination stances were just behind logic chess? I changed my mind. Great deductions are actually a bit better than that, I think, as a mechanic. So, yeah. This case is just one long investigation, and it does kind of wear thin by the end, I'll admit. But for what it actually has to offer, and for introducing Sholmes and giving him a lot of personality immediately, Sholmes is a really fun character. You like having him around no matter what. I think the mystery is fine. It is a little underwhelming of a mystery, but that's kind of the point with this game, is to have kind of unsatisfying conclusions so that ultimately in the long run things feel more satisfying. I'm gonna say, mostly for the great deductions alone, that I'm gonna put this right about here, maybe here. I think that seems about right. I'm probably going to go through and revisit all these at, like, the very end, because there's probably some decisions I'm not going to stick by. Great Ace Attorney Case 3. This one's interesting because it's only a second case in the entire series where your defendant is actually guilty, and you have to defend him, and you actually do successfully defend him this time around. Like, giving you yet another unsatisfying ending where you don't reveal the true killer because the true killer gets off the hook. And the actual mystery itself is pretty solidly done. Like, summation examinations are also really cool. I kind of wish they did a few more of them, but also narratively it probably wouldn't make sense if they did more of them. Just putting the pressure on the jury, who are obviously not ready for it, and are all giving just, like, these completely nonsense justifications for their suspicions is really fun. Van Zykes is the prosecutor. He's British Edgeworth. I'm sorry, he's just British Edgeworth. Like, I'm sure he's a good character. He's better than Black Quill or Nayuta, because he gets more development over the course of 2 games. And, I didn't mention before, but Barnum is medieval Edgeworth. Let's just get that out there. Barnum's medieval Edgeworth. Okay. Like, you do get the other prosecutor in that game, who I do like, and you do get another prosecutor in this game eventually. We'll get to that. But yeah, Van Zykes he's just British Edgeworth, which makes no sense because Edgeworth's already incredibly British. But like early 20th century or like late 19th century British Edgeworth. He's also, like, got this vampire aesthetic that's never really played into much. Like, they call him the Reaper of the Bailey, but also he's not a Reaper, he's a vampire. He's got the cloak, he's got the Dracula's glass that he throws and breaks every so often. Yeah, I do like him. He's definitely a better prosecutor than, like, the last few we've seen. And he has a more intimate role in this plot going forward. And as his first introduction, he's nice here. I'm not thrilled about the witnesses in this case. Like, they're all a little annoying. Especially Lay D first, who is probably the worst witness in the entire duology. Just, I don't like him. He bothers me. I do also have to respect how much more character design had to go into this game. Like you did see them originally reuse, like occasionally reuse models. Like there's like a guy in the next trial who's like an exact doppelganger for Lady First, who is not the same character, and the same old man. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same character or not, but he shows up in this case's jury, and then the next case, not this case's jury, the next case, the 1-4's jury and 1-5's jury. He shows up, but he's like a completely different character in both of those as well. Like they have to reuse models to get as many characters as they do, but I still respect the hustle anyways. I've not really talked much about the case itself because the one cool thing about the case is that you get to like explore the crime scene as like evidence. It's the omnibus that's brought in, and you explore it. You explore it in the first half of the trial. The trial gets interrupted. You come back and explore it later in the trial, and you see some stuff has obviously changed. And at that moment, you know there's something's up with your defendant. But also because you have to get a not guilty verdict to stay in Britain at all. And because Naruhodo has been inclined to believe in his witnesses based on his past experiences in court, it drives him to push through to the end and accuse an innocent man just because there's evidence that... just because the forged evidence suggests that he could have done it. And I find something really unsettling about this case, and I think that's intentional. Like, it's not 2-4 where, like, you're defending a straight-up obvious villain who plays on your expectations without of the entire game build-up. Like, it's a similar trick, but McGundle's all... not McGundle, McGilded. McGundle's his fan translation name. McGilded is a bit more obvious of a villain because he's a rich, evil stereotype, and he doesn't really... he gives himself away a lot easier, so it's not like as big of a shocking reveal. But the fact that you still have to keep defending him even when you know he's guilty, or like when the player knows he's guilty and Ryunosuke doesn't, I think that's really effective. And then of course he gets his anyways in the end when the omnibus gets set on fire with him in it, and he just straight up dies. Like, this game, I think one thing I respect about The Greatest Attorney is that it uses its format to tell stories that you wouldn't otherwise see. Like, the first game does this a lot with, like, non-conventional trial structures. Because, again, every trial in this game has a different format for the most part. You've got a single trial day, then you've got a single investigation. Then you've got this bizarro half-trial that just ends early. And then you've got one investigation, one trial days, 2 in a row, both of which are kind of long. I like this case a lot, though. Like, it throws a lot at you in really quick succession, and it really makes you feel as uneasy as Ryunosuke would be in his first day in British court. Like, he sets foot in the country for the first time, and, like, several hours later, he's defending a man in court. In a legal system he has no experience with, against a prosecutor who's so legendary that every one of his, every person he's prosecuted, whether or not they've been acquitted, has died. Like, like, he's very imposing, and you see him in action, he lives up to that reputation of being imposing. So you're expected to be as uneasy as Ryunosuke is, and ultimately I think it's just really effective, especially with that big wham moment at the end with the omnibus being set on fire, and you don't even know who's inside until the next case, but you kind of know, but you're not explicitly told who it is. There's a lot about this case that's really good. I think it's a great case. It sets up a lot in short succession. It's very compelling drama. It's got a solid mystery. Where do I want to put this? I think about here, yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then, I'm actually doing these two together because I just don't care for them that much. The Clouded Kokoro cases, they're filler. Especially because, I don't like, Natsume. He's like the typical annoying defendant. Well, I know he has historical significance. He's apparently a famous Japanese writer. And he does... The fact that he plays into 3 cases out of 4 in a row, and is a central figure in 3 cases in a row, 3 of 4 cases in a row, his shtick gets really old really fast. Especially since he's just, like... The cases do have a lot of similarities. You're exploring a lot of the same crime scenes. You're talking to a lot of the same witnesses. Like, there's this brick thrown in 1-4 of Shamspear and the Meter Man that gets picked up later in 2-2, and that feels like exists solely to set up that future point, which it didn't really need to. The fact that all of 1-4 is just a series of mishaps that culminates in a woman getting stabbed is not really satisfying again. Like, yeah, this game is trying to avoid being satisfying until the last case, and I think that's interesting. It fits in with Ryunosuke's character arc pretty well, but in the moment, it doesn't make for a compelling finale to just learn that, the wife threw a knife at a window, and that's why this whole case happened. Like, we do get a great deduction that's pretty fun. We get some more summation examinations that are pretty fun. But overall, I don't have much left for this case. It's not bad, but it's not great either. 2-2. On one hand, this should be the better case, because it takes a lot of what 1-4 set up and runs with it. Like, it lets you know why Olive Green was there to begin with. Why she was in a part of town where you wouldn't expect her character to be. It ties into how Natsume thinks his lodgings are, like, cursed, and explains why that is. It's got a good mystery to it, undeniably. A lot more interesting of a mystery than the last game, for sure. The last Kokoro case, for sure. But it does kind of repeat some of the same beats. Like, it's got the same jury, for the most part, except for the one new character who obviously is designed a lot more, a lot of the designs introduced in the second game are a lot more, like, formal than the designs in the first game, which you really notice starting in the next trial in 2-3, where every single, like, juror is, like, this upper class snooty person except for one. And that character is so out of place that she obviously is going to play a huge role, and she does. I do find some of the mystery really intriguing, like how it plays off the gas pipes to make a murder weapon that's very non-conventional. And how Shamspear is secretly, like, one of the worst people in the entire series. Because he wants to... Everything he does is in service of money. So he's willing to, murder one person, knowing that he has murdered them, go on to try and murder someone else. Like, he is completely unrepentant in the pursuit of money. And he's also scamming the gas company, which I actually highly support that. Go, good for you, man. I do not support the gas company at all. I do not support aristocrats taking advantage of the poor. Good on you for finding a way to circumvent the gas company. I wish we didn't have to point that out, because I would have loved to keep that charade up. Good on you, man. You did good there. And nothing else. You did not do good on the murdering part. I do think it's very interesting how Shamspear starts out as the victim, and having him, like, come back to life in the middle of, like, a conversation with Gregson is incredibly effective, like, creepy and funny at the same time. Wow, excuse me. I think that's a really strong moment. But also, this bothers me more than anything else. Like, the entire second trial day is an absolute mess. Like, the prosecution's argument starts at like this completely bizarre place that takes up like a third of the entire trial that I felt was completely pointless. And then after that, you have to make like these weird, huge leaps to put everything together because the trials got stuck on something so pointless for so long. So it ends up feeling really messy. There's also one thing I don't get that happens. Like the cat comes down from the second floor apartment to the first floor apartment, and I thought that was going to play into the murder for some reason, like showing there's some connection between the two that the cat had found. But no, the cat's just there to be there for some reason. There's no real explanation as to why given, which I thought was really strange. I also gotta say, I think I do like Olive Green as like this antagonist would-be murderer who has this tragic backstory of her fiance or boyfriend, one of those two, being murdered by Shakespeare, and where she thought it was an accident, but then later figured out that it might not have been an accident and actually tries to kill him in revenge, but in a way where the revenge wouldn't happen if he wasn't actually a murderer. And that she was smart enough to work out his revenge, his murder plot before everyone else also. And the way she just kind of coldly accepts everything and is willing to kill herself too. It's like, she's a really grim character when you think about it. Who's just been handed like the absolute worst lot in life. I like her a lot, but the fact that this case also takes place in the second half of the game, where pretty much every other case has something really flashy or dramatic about it, or ties into the rest of the game really well. And this case is just kind of there, where its only relevant plot point is the caller at the very end. Like, the lead into this case is that something happens in this case that makes Miko Toba call back Susato to Japan, but it's actually just seeing this caller, which comes into effect later, but it's something that happens after the case is concluded, and nothing about the case itself or the case notes actually matter. Like, Susato's like, hey, you gotta check out this case again. We missed something. And no, it's just they found a bloody collar at the very end. I don't know. This is in a weird place where technically it's better than 1-4, but I like it less. I'm gonna put it about here. I'm gonna put it out here because it came at a point where it really didn't need to be. Like, this case, 1-4, I can kind of see the justification for existing, even if it doesn't really add much by itself either, and is kind of tedious. 2-2 is less tedious, more pointful, and it somehow made me sour on the game so much that I had to take a break for a bit. So I'm kind of upset at it for that reason alone. Anyways. This puts everything nice in a row for all the big cases at the end. Like, first off, the big finale case of 1-5, which suffers from pacing problems, as does a lot of the Great Ace Attorney, where, you spend half of this, 4-part investigation just thinking about a pawn shop, and the murderer comes in, tries to take the jacket with the music box disc. You get a nice, great deduction out of that, which is, I think, the last one in the game. And it's this absolutely over-the-top bank robbery scheme that Shulms comes up with, which is, he's so good. You also get that colored blood thing, which is a interesting mechanic, I guess. Though it's also very reasonably not considered evidence, and I actually respect the game for not letting it be used as anything other than logic. As a tool to connect the dots, but not something you can prove anything with, rather. It also ties in really nicely to 1-3. It picks up a lot of the mysteries that case left on the table with its abrupt ending, and follows them through to the end. The murderer is, he's fine. He's very weird in his animations, but I think that's intentional to make him look kind of dorky, despite how cool he's tried to be. again, it's kind of overlong. Gina's like the first defendant you could like fully trust in the game. So her not being the murderer is kind of a foregone conclusion. But proving how it happened is very interesting. Like proving how there was a third gun, proving that the murder took place at a different time than they thought it did. And pulling in one of the good old classic tricks of having the murderer say something he shouldn't know, and then not realizing that he shouldn't have said it until later when you're given the cat flap maker. I thought that was a pretty clever mystery to solve. Yeah. Then the whole underlying plot of the state secrets being leaked through this like music box scheme, I thought that was like really clever. I don't know how much of an anachronism that is, like if that's something you could have physically done at that time or not. Probably, but I don't know. I thought it was a good motive for the villain, as well as a motive for Nick Gilded and the 1-3 case that never got resolved. And that the juror who's already proven to be skilled in like telecommunications, like the typewriter lady who's back with the telegram in this one, I thought that was a good reuse of a character that also ties in with her gimmick and also makes her an important character in the plot itself. I thought that was pretty clever. The weird fixation on stereoscopes, especially considering I know why the stereoscopes were included. It's to get use out of the 3D function of the 3DS. But considering the versions of this game I've played are the Android version and the Switch version, neither of which have the 3D functionality, it's really weird how hard they are pushing it. And it's completely ditched after this case, too. Like, it never comes up again. Like, this game has a lot of one-off gimmicks like that. Like the blood coloring in this case, the handprints, the skin prints or whatever in 2-2 that I didn't really talk about because they aren't important. It introduces all these like little gimmicks and then just drops them to the side, which none of them really add much, I feel, but they're not. At least there's some interesting revelations, but you kind of have to just play a game to spot the difference because I cannot do the stereoscope thing at all myself. There's only two times where it comes up, so it's not a huge deal. I do like how this ties together everything about 1-3, which is like, it's kind of trying to have an overarching story on this one game, but there's only 2 cases for it to really do that. But it doesn't wrap up everything neatly while still leaving open a lot of the big questions, like Barack von Zeke's backstory, the question of male Strongheart in general. It leaves a lot on the table. It leaves a lot of room to progress the story further, while closing off its like own contained story. I think it's pretty effective in that. It's not like the best as like a closing chapter because it doesn't really have a huge payoff, but it does have a satisfying finale. The fact that up to this point you haven't really been given the chance to get a satisfying finale makes that breakdown at the end feel all the more cathartic. So yeah, I'm gonna say this is a pretty good case. I don't think it's as good as 1-3, honestly, but it's still a pretty good finale. Yeah, right about here. That feels about right to me. Yeah, that feels about right to me. So we move on to The Great Ace Attorney 2, which is the first new Ace Attorney game I've played in 2 years for me, which I just got done playing over like the last week and a half or so. More like a week, yeah. It starts off. This game is out to just like burn to the ground everything the first game does. It starts off with you playing as, of all people, Susato, taking the defense's bench in Japan again, defending her best friend in like a similar Larry Butts sort of scenario. And the murder victim is Josiah Brett, the murderer from the first case of the entire game, whose questions are still unanswered, mind you. Why was she here? What was her motive? Why did she kill Wilson? Who knows? You don't get the answers to that question, but I did really think the mystery of this one was paced a lot better than the first case in the first game. Like, it's two trial segments. It's very clearly split. It's also got a mystery that's just like, it's the right balance of being clever enough to not be immediately obvious, but not so clever that you can't put it together yourself. Like, it was the moment I saw that second photograph, where it was taken from, I knew who the murder victim was, and the fact that you hadn't really, the murderer was rather, and the fact that you had seen the murderer, but not really interacted with him. He's just been in the background of Natsume's testimony the whole time. I think that was like a really clever murderer, and his motive makes a lot of sense too. Also, in the moment I saw the pen, I knew that there was poison involved. I also knew that, yes, that pen is definitely where the poison was hidden. It's going to be like the big linchpin at the very end. So that made me feel clever. I do think this does serve as like a nice follow-up to the first case of the first game. It also gives the judge more personality, like, after the fact, because, like, the only one who's taken in by Susato's disguise out of the entire courtroom is Ouchie Ouch, who I love. I love Ouchie's name. Like, I just saying Kingdom Hearts Just a Pancake, Ouchie Ouch voice is how I always say his name. Ouchie Ouch. That's a great name. I hope they've always been called Ouchie in the Japanese games, because that's a better name than Pain ever was. But yeah, he's the only one taken in by the disguise. The judge is smarter than that because Mikutoba told him in advance, because they're friends, and the judge is a pretty cheerful guy, actually. I like that he's given character, especially since his character becomes more important later in the game too. But the way the trial plays out, the mystery, the drama of it all, it's paced a lot better than the first case of the first game, I think. Yeah, so that's really about all I have to say about this one. I'm kind of inclined to put it like just above this one, because they're very similar cases in the way they're framed and the way they're presented. So they both take place in the Japanese court. They both revolve around a lot of the same characters. Even the same murder strategy, where, like, you think there's like a physical wound to disguise a poisoning in both cases. And also the reason why that the news guy stabbed Desile after realizing his mistake with using the poison is really clever too. Like, I think that was executed really well. It's a really good mystery. It's not as good as a drama, I think, as 1-1. So, but it's paced just well enough that I think it slightly edges it out. 2-3. 2-3 is not the longest case in the series, but it is the second longest case in the series, I believe. Like, I think only 6-5 tops this one in terms of length. You get a very lengthy investigation that goes into the whole details of not being able to even investigate the crime scene properly, having to go all around to try and gather more information, and then this complete aside of the wax museum, which, just based on the fact that they made you do this, I figured out pretty early on that there was a wax figure involved in the in the crime itself, which I don't think is even pointed out until the second day of the trial. So that's something you can pick up on really early. It comes full circle on later, but isn't really relevant to that first trial day. I love how, like, the part of it's also based on, like, a magic trick, where the two explosions are used to disguise that there was a second body and second birdcage all along. Let's see. The defendant hits that right level of, like, kind of incompetent and annoying. He's got that ahoge, which shows that he's a very stupid person despite his intentions of being incredibly smart scientist man. But he's also, his relationship to Van Zykes also makes for an interesting dynamic between the two of them. It makes you question why Van Zykes would prosecute him in the first place, which I don't think there's really ever a good answer to, other than that Van Zykes wants to protect his intellectual rights over his life for some reason. Which, to be fair, is also what the professor was, stupidly enough, but... So that's... The first half of the trial is kind of normal stuff happening. You disprove the magic trick, and thus prove that you could investigate the crime scene, but you're not actually allowed to do it yourself in the end. It's a long investigation and a long trial, to the point where I thought it was going to be a one day, but then it just goes on from there with a second investigation day and second trial. And the weird thing is, it doesn't feel over long despite that. Like, that second investigation day is really long, but it is just jam-packed with stuff. Like, you finally get to start peering into the heart of, like, the underlying mystery surrounding the game by learning about the professor, in the second investigation and the mysterious rising from the dead he did. You also get to have this interesting hunt after Idok Drebber that leads to fighting his hidden lair, investigating it, dealing with a great deduction in the middle of a time bomb ticking down, and a deduction that's really well animated. Also, I like how they animate all the, like, anti-gravity shenanigans that Sholmes is daydreaming about. But also having a really clever puzzle in that deduction. I don't think it's the most clever deduction puzzle. We'll get to that later. But it's still a pretty satisfying deduction that leads to the reveal. And Enoch Drebber is such a good character. Like, he's such a good villain character, despite the fact that he's technically not a murderer in any capacity by the end. Which, if I do have one gripe about this case, I think the entire plot about Courtney Scythe being the murderer in the end kind of felt tacked on and unnecessary. Like, I'm not sure what it adds to the plot, other than taking her out of the equation for the next cases. But it's just something that comes out of nowhere. There's not really any hint to it other than that one blood stain. And, I don't know. It feels like she is the murderer just because if she wasn't the murderer, there would be no female murderers in the entire duology besides Josiah Brett, I guess. Which, I don't know. That's kind of a stretch to say, I guess. The ending rubbed me the wrong way, but otherwise it's a pretty good case. I'm feeling like I should be a little bit generous with this one, and I'd probably put it like... I'm thinking like, probably about here. Yeah, that seems about right, thinking about it. Alright, I'm gonna keep it there for now. 2-4. 2-4 is like 5-4. Investigations 2-4. Not Investigations. Ace Attorney Chronicles 2-4 is a lot like the main series 5-4, in that it has a weird flow to it where you do an investigation, you do a trial, and you do another investigation, and then it leads into 2-5 for the big finale. Where you don't really resolve anything in this case. The most you do is figure out, during the first investigation trial day, you start peering more into the professor case. You figure out that Gregson, of all people, was part of the Reaper, so there's more to that. And a lot of the first trial basically focuses around not exposing the murderer, but actually solving the kidnapping case that originally seemed to be unrelated. Like, the moment I realized that Gossip was a disguise for Mr. Vigil, like, seeing his hairstyle and his eyebrows hidden under that hat, I thought it was really clever because Gossip has a horrifying character design, and that being intentionally evoked to disguise his actually fairly normal appearance is genius, in my opinion. Like, they play on the trope of really weird, ugly characters to trick you into believing that's what he actually looks like. And that this supposedly inconsequential, ugly character becomes such a central role in the rest of the case is a really good twist. And then the second investigation day, there's honestly not much to it besides coming to the realization that Mikotoba is the true, Sholem was his true partner all along. And also that great deduction in their room is so funny. It's so funny. Seeing Iris refusing to talk because she has something in her mouth, it's something you can pick up on pretty easily. But seeing her just looking so fussy the whole while is really funny on its own. And then when Sholmes opens the chest and gets thwapped in the gut by that boxing glove and lands exactly on the couch where Miko Toba had, it's so good. It's one of the funniest moments in the entire game, even maybe in the entire series. And there's other stuff that happens during that investigation case, but it kind of all passes over you because it's not that important. And it's also, the game is kind of content to call the case done after that big reveal too. So it's got its good moments for sure. Like, there's a lot to like about this case. I think the fact that it ends a bit unsatisfyingly is a bit of a turnoff, and that it's mostly just a build up to what happens in the last case. But I also respect that they split these cases up instead of having one huge, disastrously long case like 5-5 or what half brings it down. So I'm gonna say, where do I want to put this? I'm thinking, where do I want to put this? I think here seems about right. Like, there's a lot of cool reveals in this one, but there's no real conclusion to it. It just kind of ends before you'd expect it to. Because, like, there's a lot to this case that makes it go off. Like, one, the murder victim is Gregson, who's a character who's been there the entire game. This is again, something that the game does that it couldn't deal with if it was planning to be, like, an extended series. Like, you couldn't murder Gumshoe if you wanted to. You couldn't murder Emma if you wanted to. And, like, Fulbright was there to be a murderer from the very start. So it's not something... I think it's a different case where, like, he's the murder victim, but also kind of a villain. And then you also have... you pull in Van Zykes as a prosecutor, which is... as the defendant, rather, which is, again, a very Edgeworth thing to do. It's also been done by Black Quill, of course. And then, let's see. There was one other thing that I really liked about, like, the setup of this case that I'm forgetting what it was now. Oh, that Sogi's back, which was revealed at the end of Case 3, and that he's going to be the prosecutor. Having that same Phoenix and Edgeworth dynamic in the courtroom, with their best friends fighting against each other because of a misunderstanding, and the prosecutors acting weirdly cold. Having that dynamic come back into play is really interesting. I do think one thing about this game as a whole, in this case especially, that bugs me is that the jury system is kind of just dunked to the curb here. Like, there's no jury after 2-3 anymore. Like, you get 2 summation examinations in Case 2, you get 1 summation examination in Case 3, and then that mechanic just doesn't come back at all for the finale. Which is, it feels really weird. Like, I get why it has to be a closed trial, but it's just weird how they just toss an entire mechanic to the curb like that, I feel. It's not a huge loss. It doesn't really go against the case, and the drama itself is good. The reveals are pretty interesting. But I can't say it elevates beyond, like, good just because there's not much to the case itself as a whole. Like, it's half a case, basically. It's half a case, and all the big stuff happens in the second half. Speaking of the last case, the Great Ace Attorney Case 2-5. Oh boy. This case is, as of grand finale, it's got one of the most obvious villains in the entire series. Like, Strongheart has been, throughout the entire game, very obviously evil, and you've known he's obviously evil. And having him be the big villain at the top of it all is not a surprise to anyone paying attention, I feel like. But learning the depths of what he's done, like, learning how much control he's had over everyone in the game up to this point, and how much, like, his influence has impacted every single character in the game. Like, he was not only behind the Professor murders up to a certain point, who then also had his hand forced by the absolute god himself, Genshin Asogi, who single-handedly exposes his entire corrupt plan 10 years after the fact. What a master. After being falsely framed as Professor, even, who was not he was not the Professor at all. He was just someone who killed the Professor, even, in a fair duel, which is treated by murder by the British police. So he did do a murder, I guess, but whatever. But yeah, the Professor was not him. It was Clint Van Zyke's, but only the first murder the Professor did was actually of his own volition, and the rest of them were forced by Male Strongheart, who then forces the jailbreak, and then betrays the person he helped jailbreak after the fact by getting someone else to shoot him. That someone else being, of all people, the Japanese judge, Jigoku, who's also the person who killed Gregson after an assassin exchange that Strongheart forced Jigoku into to kill Wilson and Gregson for their part in the autopsy, and having half of that botched up by random chance on the voyage to Japan, to England from Japan, and that plan being put into effect simply to grant both of them diplomatic immunity so they couldn't be tried is like galaxy brain stuff. And then the fact that even after the fact, after the Professor dies, he immediately follows it up by instating the Reaper. One of the Professor's victims was the former Minister of Justice, who he replaced, and then used his position to control Gregson into investigating and assassinating every single aristocrat that Van Zykes couldn't prosecute himself, and then letting Van Zykes take the fall for that and making him the face of all those murders, and then disposing of the Reaper when it was no longer useful to him, all just in the pursuit of his own power. Like, the man is like Damon Gant, but if Damon Gant was an entire villain of 2 games worth of murders. And it's like significantly more chess mastery and less inclined to get his hands dirty. Like, he actually gets no blood on his hands whatsoever, which even like Damon Gant got blood on his hands. Simon Keyes from Investigations 2, despite his chessmaster status, also got blood on his hands. The only reason why Strongheart gets caught is because of this Deus Ex Machina from Sholmes, where he's transmitting the entire trial to the Queen, which I thought was kind of really contrived, honestly. I was hoping there would be like some way to pin a murder on him the same way you would pin the murder on Simon Keyes in Investigations 2, but that turns out that's not the case. He literally just never got his hands dirty, if anything. And that's not even taking into a fact that you get to also play as Sholmes' assistant, Miku Toba, and do a very glorious great deduction, one last great deduction, to reveal the hiding place of Jigoku on the ship. It's all just great fun. Like, I do have my issues with the pacing. Like, the first trial is built up as like this big grand finale where Strongheart's present. You have all the clues you need to solve the mystery, and then like an hour into that trial, your everything is brought to a dead halt. You cut to this investigation, and the trial is just concluded for the day. You're thrown into like an investigation sequence, which is just a long dialogue section with not any actual investigating. Which fine, I'm fine with having that be that short, just to keep the pacing going before you get into the real big finale trial where everything comes out piece by piece. and like it is a weird pacing, but I think it ultimately works. It's just a little rocky to start, but it ultimately does come together. I do think the mystery is like really well done in this game. Like everything across the two games is tied together, and like intentionally so. Whereas you can tell with like 3-5, everything is kind of ad hocly tied together at the end. Like, there wasn't a 3-game plan to tie everything together at the last moment. They just left some breadcrumbs hanging that they were able to take advantage of to write a really great case. And while the drama is not super high in this case, I feel like, because the stakes aren't that great, really. Like, yes, Van Zyk's getting prosecuted would suck, but I don't know. I didn't feel the stakes or the suspense that much in this trial, which is like the one point against it I really have besides the weird pacing. But overall, it's a really satisfying conclusion to the entire Chronicles duology. I want to call it like low excellent. Yeah, I think I could put it here and not be like, I think the Terry Falls moment puts this above. Like, you'd think that this short baby case being in like my top 6 would be absolutely weird, but I honestly stand by it. I absolutely stand by it, and I will not be convinced otherwise. But yeah, I will also say I think having the main villain of the game in the case being Strongheart, while also having this like fall guy in Jigoku, who's basically had his hand forced the entire time. He does come as a surprising murderer, but the clues are there if you pay attention, so I think it's a pretty clever murder plot. Yeah, overall though, like, as far as the Great Ace Attorney overall, I do think it consistently suffers from pacing problems that were introduced as early as Dual Destinies. Though that's most felt in the Kokoro cases, which both feel completely pointless to me. Like, they're not bad. They're not turnabout storyteller levels of completely worthless, but by themselves, don't add much, and they kind of slow down the game's pacing, which the games are all already quite long on their own. Yeah. I like them. It's not my favorite Ace Attorney games. I'd probably rank them both below, like, if I were to do an Ace Attorney games tier list, which let's just do that real quick. At the very bottom, we're going to put, I think, Edgeworth and then Apollo Justice. After that, I'm inclined to put Justice for All, I think, as the third worst. No, actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to put Layton as the third worst, because Layton doesn't have the linchpin of a really, really strong finale like Justice for All has. Let me just go over this. Yeah, Justice for All would be, I think, fourth worst. I think I would put Chronicles 1 smack dab in the middle as... Is it smack dab in the middle? How many games are there? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 games. I don't know why I'm thinking there's only 9 games for some reason. Yeah. I would put Chronicles 1, I think, and then Dual Destinies. I want to say... yeah, let's put Chronicles 2, Spirit of Justice, and then, obviously, the first game and Trials and Tribulations. First game, Investigations 2, and then Trials and Tribulations. That sounds about right. Like, I don't have this all written down in front of me or anything. This is not, like, canon. Like, I don't have that tier list open, unfortunately, but you get the picture, right? Like, Spirit of Justice does have the worst case in the series, like I said. Like, and I stand by this. But it also has 2 really good cases and a really... It has 2 excellent cases. One of the excellent cases is unfortunately tied to a kind of average case, though. A kind of... it's in a good case, but... And it's also got just kind of a mediocre middle to it overall. Like, after the start, it just kind of peters out until it gets to the end. But its highs are really high. Yeah, that sounds about right then to me. So from the top down, that would be Trials and Tribulations, Investigations 2, First Game, Spirit of Justice, Chronicles 2. Let me see, what's next? Dual Destinies, Chronicles 1, Justice for All, Layton, Apollo, Edgeworth 1. That sounds right. That's all 11 games, right? Okay. As for the cases, if we're just going to revisit this tier list real quick, these are all staying at the top. I haven't made up my mind if I want to put this at the very top tier. No, I think it's fine here. And then this, yeah, this is definitely my top 5. This is definitely my top 5, though. 3, 4... I feel weird for having this one so high, but I genuinely believe it belongs here because it's the most replayable case in the series, is my argument here. Then 2-5, not Chronicles 2-5 being here. You know, I could swap these two. I think this is more satisfying, but this is probably more emotionally effective. So I'm gonna leave it as it is. And I do think these are a tier above the rest of these great cases and these good cases. Like 5-5, really solid finale. 6-5 would be a better finale than 5-5 if it was just the second half. 3-2 has got... Luke Atme is probably the best villain in the series. He's just so much fun. He is so much fun. Him and Roger Reddens are both really, really fun, but I like the pull of this case a bit more, which is why I have it a lot higher. And then, yeah, this one, this is such a unique entity in the series. Like, there's no other case like it. I kind of really like it for that. I love how just goofy this case is. This is such a good case. Investigations 2-4. Like, I like the implications of this case for the entire series, but as a drama, you know what? No, I do think it belongs right where it is. Investigations 1-5. Yeah, this is not the most satisfying conclusion, but it's still pretty strong. Rise from the Ashes, I think if I had this one more immediately in memory, it'd be higher. But compared to the first 4 cases, which are like part of my DNA at this point, I never tend to remember this one as well. Investigations 2, not Investigations, Great Ace Attorney 2-3, yeah, that seems, yeah, I bet that's about right. 3-1, this is only A for Dahlia, I'll fully admit it. Like, in terms of, like, the actual case as a whole, it's not better than a lot of these, but Dahlia is such a good presence that I can't help but put her here. 2-2, I give this, this is really only here because it introduces Cyclops, which, again, I'm basing a lot of this off experience and context. And that's what elevates this case as high it is, because, like, the case itself is a very good Ace Attorney case, but other than that, it's nothing special. But that it introduces Franziska, then it introduces Cyclops, elevates it a lot beyond what it otherwise would be. Investigations 2-1, theoretically a better intro case than 3-1, but it doesn't have that same... It doesn't have a Dahlia to its name. Same with the first 2... The opening cases of the both Chronicles, Great Ace Attorney Chronicles games. Both really strong opening cases. The last Layton case, which is just a Layton reveal, is pretty effective, but not really an Ace Attorney case. 1-2, this holds a lot of weight, but it's as a case, it's very primitive and ends unsatisfyingly. I'm actually going to move this up a little bit. Yeah, let's move this one up a little bit, because I think this is a really good case. It's like, it's definitely the best case in Investigations 1. Like, no question about it. You get a lot of, it's got interesting backstory, it's got an interesting setting, it's got the judge as a witness, which is just so much fun. It's a fun case. So yeah, 4-4, Huh. Do I put this over 1-2? I'm conflicted. I'm gonna leave it as it is. Let's see. Layton case 3. Yeah, I think this is good where it is. 2-4. It's one of those build-up cases. Hard to say it's one of the best, but hard to deny it's good. 6-1. Pretty good intro case. Investigations 2. The weakest case in the game, despite that still being really good. 4-1. Bit overrated, but still really good. 5-1. Also pretty strong intro case. A great attorney case 1-2, mostly here just for having the first great deductions, which are a ton of fun. 1-1, the very first case in the game, hard to deny this is a good case. Like, as a tutorial, it's just really good. This one, I feel like putting this right next to 1-1 has to be true. Because it's the entire gang's back, man. Like, it's not especially special. 5-3 is the first case where it has problems, like serious problems. Like, I feel like I'm being generous putting this where it is, but the experience of actually playing it at the time was not as bad as it is in hindsight, I feel like. So I think that's elevating it a little for me. As for 6-3, which I remember also being strong at the time, but I find this case really forgettable. 5-4, this is just a build-up that doesn't really satisfy. 1-5, Investigations 1-5. A really good case that turns into a really mediocre one at the end. First witch trial of Layton is fine. 1-3, it's the first case in the series that has like pacing and character problems. Investigations 1-2, it's just kind of forgettable. Dual Destinies 5-2, kind of forgettable. 4-2, a lot of these second cases are really forgettable, I feel like. Like, you've got some good second cases. You've got 6-2, which is one of the best cases in the series. You've got 2-2, obviously, and 2-2 and 1-2 are both really strong. Even Investigations 1-2 is pretty strong, but beyond that, a lot of the second cases kind of pale in comparison. Though not as badly as the third case is fair. Up until Edge of 3, third cases were just not doing it for the series. And then, yeah, this one is just kind of there. Clouded Kokoro 1, kind of bland. This one is overhated, but honestly, I do think it probably belongs in the mediocre tier. I'm just going to leave it here out of spite towards all of you, because not putting it in the bottom tiers is probably going to piss off someone. And none of these are hot takes, I don't think. Like, putting this below the first Clouded Kokoro, I think, is a hot take, but I genuinely dislike it more. Same with 1-3, I feel like actually this one is like the barrier line between mediocre and okay, because it's just so bland. There's nothing to like about it really, other than a few character moments. It's just, but it doesn't really do anything wrong either. Like, most of these cases have more flaws than this one. This one just lacks for positive qualities. Whereas this one, I just like this one irrationally. I dislike this one irrationally. Like, reasonably speaking, this should be a good case. I just dislike it. I can't explain it. This one, I can't explain why I dislike it, and I think everyone dislikes this case for the most part. This one is completely... These two are just, like, the most forgettable intro cases. They just have nothing special to them. And then... Yeah, I'm kind of off camera here, I think. These two are just forgettable. And then Turnabout Storyteller just flat out sucks. Like, it's the only case in the series I genuinely dislike. It wrecks the pacing of the entire game so badly, and for what? For ableism and a boring case. Wonderful. You love to see it. That's where we're going to call it, I think. I think I'm pretty happy with pretty much all these rankings. Like, I'm not sure there's anything here I want to change. I think I hit the nail on the head, honestly, with my placements. Like, feel free to disagree in the comments. I'm sure plenty of people will. Like, and just to be clear, like, I'm not saying any of these cases are bad, except for Turnabout Storyteller, and some of the mediocre cases are not great. And like I said, I think every Ace Attorney game is good. I don't think there's a single bad Ace Attorney game. Even the weakest games, Apollo Justice and Edge of 1, they're pretty decent games. They have their moments. They're maybe not worth playing all the way through in the same way the rest of the games in the series are. And when the game's at its best, with like entire masterfully crafted games like Trials and Tribulations or Investigations 2, or just absolute pinnacles of storytelling like 2-4, 1-4, 6-2, etc. It's there's so much love in the series. I love this series so much, and I can't wait for them to make more of them, because I will absolutely be there to play them if they do. Anyways, if you somehow manage to sit through what I think has to be like 5.5 hours of me rambling unscripted about Ace Attorney games and cases, props to you. Thank you for watching. If you have your own opinions, I'd love to hear them, because I'm sure every single person has a different opinion on the 50-something cases that make up the bulk of this series so far. And I hope that number will go up in the future, because I'd love to see more. Please, Capcom, give us Ace Attorney 7. I'm begging you. Thank you, and good night.